Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and in today's video we're doing an amplifier and subwoofer in this 2025 Ford Explorer. Now in this install we're going to show you how to integrate this new amp and sub to the existing factory audio sound system. Let's get started. Before we jump into things, a couple of things to note. There's a few different audio trim options available from Ford in this generation Explorer, and mainly it's either going to be the Sony or B&O or the base audio sound system. Now obviously the newer vehicles in this generation are going to have B&O, and you'll see that circle logo on the dash on the very right hand side on the passenger side. Now if you don't have B&O, you're not going to have the factory subwoofer, you're not going to have the factory grill in the back. You won't have that any B&O branding or anything like that, and you'll have a base audio trim. Whether you have the base trim or the amplified trim, we're going to walk through the entire process and how to integrate an amp and sub to that factory audio sound system. So without further ado, let's head to the bench to show you the parts that we're going to need for the install. Alright, so here at the bench now, the parts that we're using today's install, first and foremost is the amp and subwoofer that the customer wants us to install. Specifically, he went with this Kicker L7T. It's a 12-inch, and this fits just about perfectly in the cargo pocket above the spare tire, as he wants to keep the cargo area behind the back seats as open as possible. So this actually is the biggest subwoofer preloaded in a box that'll fit there without modification. Does about 600 watts at 2 ohms. Now in order to power this, we need an amplifier. You can do either the Kicker or we're doing the audio control version. This is the Epic 1000, and this does about that wattage. It's about 700 watts or so at 2 ohms, so it's a pretty good match for this Kicker subwoofer. If you want the Kicker equivalent, we can also link that in the description for you as well. In order to integrate this amp and sub to the factory audio sound system, this is where it'll differentiate whether you have factory B&O or factory base audio. If you have the factory B&O or the base audio, you need some sort of line-out converter in most instances. In this case, we're going with the Kicker key. It's a key lock. This is basically a line-out converter that fixes all your bass roll-off. It has a built-in DSP, and it's basically self-tuning to give you the flattest, cleanest output signal from your factory audio sound system as possible. Now, in order to connect a line-out converter of your choosing to that factory audio sound system, it's going to be one of two ways. Now, if you have the base audio sound system, you're going to need some sort of T-harness here. Now, this is a T-harness I offer on my website. It allows you to plug one end to the OEM radio module, and then the other end, the factory harness, will plug into our harness. And that allows these pigtail ends to actually allow you to cut, change, and modify for an aftermarket amplifier and subwoofer. This one specifically has a sub output and a power output for a line-out converter. The other ones will simply just pass through because we're not changing the configuration for our door and dash speakers. If you want something like this T-harness, we can link it in the description. It's kind of like a pack audio harness. Now lastly here, we have to bring power to our amplifier, and our amp calls for a 4-gauge amplifier wiring kit. We're going with this Kicker 1500 watt 4-gauge amplifier wiring kit. It's going to be perfect to power our audio control amp, and it comes with just about everything that we'll need for our install. So, alright, so what we've done, we've spent some time. We grabbed ourselves a sheet of 12 by 12 1/8-inch ABS plastic here, and we mounted our amplifier, unboxed it, and we got our key lock as well. We already spent some time to start mocking things up. Now, since our key lock is, our line-out converter is going to be so close to our amplifier, we can just use some shorter RCA cables, and these are about 18 inches. You could use the 17-foot one that came with your amplifier wiring kit, as long as you're okay with that extra bulk wire. From our key lock, once it processes the factory signal from the OEM subwoofer, then it outputs that audio into the inputs of our amplifier. And what we did is we used our Provo Beast clean wire ruler and got our zip ties all nice and clean and mounted here, along with our base knob wire that goes just down. Now this panel is going to just sit right next to the subwoofer in the rear cargo cubby. We still need to wire up everything on the power side of the amplifier, as well as our key lock, and we'll go over this harness. Now our amplifier requires a couple of power connections. There's going to be a 12-volt power. This is where we're going to pull power from the battery. So in your amplifier wiring kit, you're going to have the long battery cable. It looks like this guy. One end It's going to go to the input of the amplifier on the other end. It's going to go all the way up to the battery and grab the battery terminal power there. Now it does come with an inline fuse, which we're going to put as close to the battery side as possible, as it protects the run of wire that goes all the way to the amplifier. As for your ground cable as well, this end will go in here, and then we'll ground this preferably to an OEM ground somewhere in the rear cargo area. We do have a subwoofer output here. They supply subwoofer output speaker wire. It'll go from here to our subwoofer box. And then lastly, there's a remote in. We need to tell our amplifier when to turn on. Now, a couple of ways to do that, and most higher end or nicer line out converters are going to provide some sort of turn on for you. It'll generate one, so you don't have to look for one in the vehicle. In this case, our key lock has a blue wire, and that blue wire is a remote turn on, and that'll go to the remote turn on input of our amplifier. Now that's it for the terminals here. Let's talk about the rest of the wires on our key lock. Now, yellow and black, those are our constant 12 volt and ground. We need battery power as well as a ground. We'll probably add a fuse to this, but we need to power our key lock. One of the easiest ways is we can actually snag power from the terminals of our amplifier. We'll just snake those in there as well. Again, we like to fuse our power wire to protect the circuitry on the kicker key lock. This red wire is an accessory on, but in our vehicle we don't have one readily accessible, so we're not going to use our red turn on here just because this truck runs on DC offset. So we're going to cap this off. We won't use our red wire, and we're going to allow the kicker key to create and make a turn on for us on our behalf for our amplifier using DC offset. So red wire will be used. Now lastly here we have our speaker wire inputs. This is where we're going to feed signal from our factory audio sound system into this key lock so it can do all its processing, DSP, and output those RCAs to the amplifier. So grays are right, whites are left. Now, depending on the trim level of your Ford Explorer, if you have the factory audio sound system, these 4 wires will actually be connecting into the factory subwoofer that's found behind the rear cargo panel on the driver's side, and we're going to show you in this video how to make those connections. If you don't have the factory B&O audio sound system and you have the base audio, you'll use the T-harness to connect these 4 wires into the factory radio module found on the passenger side cargo area behind the panel, and that'll pull the signal for your amplifier so it knows what to play. And again, we offer this T-harness on our website if you want to pick one up for your vehicle. It's really an easy way for a plug-and-play setup. That's our plan of attack. What we're going to do is start wiring up our amplifier here on the bench as much as possible. Then we'll go lay this into the car, make our connections in the car, and pull our power wire all the way to the battery. That fits in there pretty good. Just like so. So that's the biggest subwoofer box that we found. The biggest sub that'll fit in this cubby. You still have a little bit of space for an amplifier over here as well. It's kind of a cool setup. It works well in our application. Fortunately, in our case, with this pulled apart, our factory amplifier for our B&O audio system is right here, and the OEM subwoofer is just right above it. We also additionally have a couple of grounds. There's a big ground right here. There's a couple other grounds that we can use for amplifier rack. If we didn't have the OEM B&O, this wouldn't obviously be here, but the radio module for the OEM radio up front is actually back here, but it's on the driver's side just behind the rear panel, and that's where that T-harness would plug in to make that nice and easy for you. So this gives us access to the OEM amplifier, some ground, so we can start now mapping out lengths of wire, and let's go back to the bench to start assembling our amp rack. All right, so we have this panel pulled back. Now we can tap into the factory subwoofer plug here or back here as well. We're gonna find the polarity. We'll throw that up on the screen here. It's a dual voice coil subwoofer. It's an 8-inch subwoofer. So we'll do one channel to one coil, one channel to the other coil. We'll feed that into our line out converter or whatever line out converter you're using. And that'll allow us basically to snag that signal, convert it in line out converter for our new amplifier. So that's where we're gonna tap into. Let's head back to the bench to start assembling our kit. All right, so I went ahead and soldered on here. Now don't let this confuse you. My fuse holder happens to be red, but it is connected into the yellow. Also mount this up here, and then we'll put wire ferrules on that, and it'll go right up and snag it into the terminals of the amplifier. We'll extend these wires to go to the factory subwoofer. We'll snag both coils there. Now we added our subwoofer output, and we also have to run our power and ground. All right, so for our input here, I actually added a little pigtail so I can do a quick disconnect. A little 4-pin Molex connector, and I added one on this end. Now this is actually a unique kind of cable. This is called 5-conductor cable. You may be familiar with 9-conductor cable. Difference is this only has 5 wires. Now we're not using the 5th wire, remote turn on, but we are using the other speaker wire. You can use normal speaker wire too, but I do like this cable. And then again, this is a nice quick disconnect where the other end of this cable will tap into the factory sub signal for signal, so we can feed our kicker key lock the signal so it can do its conversion and send it to our amplifier. So we're going to loom this up. We're going to get it zip tied on here. We're going to finish zip tying our power wire, and we'll be done with our amp rack. All right, so we finished up our amp rack here. Got all our connections now made. Power. We'll go to the battery, ground, we'll find a good factory ground location. We get our signal input from the factory sub that comes all the way down here to a little pigtail. We made a run that'll go to our OEM amplifier here, and that'll just plug in. Kind of nice. Speaker output goes to the sub box. Nice 12-gauge wire. Now, on our line out converter, we got power yellow going into the positive terminal through an inline fuse. We got black ground going into the ground side. We're just snaking underneath there, snagging power from those terminals. And then we're not using the red. Again, we capped off red, and then blue goes into our remote turn on input of our amplifier. So that really covers all our connections. This side's obviously all done, cleaned up, good to go. So at this point of time, we can actually grab this. We'll head over to the car to start getting everything installed. Alright, so next here we need to tap into our speaker subwoofer wiring here. Now it's a dual voice coil, so there's 2 sets of speaker wire going to it. We're going to treat that like a 2-channel. Now in this harness, when you pull this back, you're going to have a couple of connections here. We have green and black, which is 1 pair, and then we have yellow purple, which is another pair. Now green is positive, black is negative on this first set. Then yellow is positive and purple is negative. We tested polarity there. We tested each coil. That's what we're getting. So what we're going to do is just strip the wire back there. We've already started to do that. We're going to do a military splice on this connection, and that's going to allow us to tap easily into that without damaging the factory wiring. Okay, so we've made our military splice. Now we're just going to put a quick little solder joint there to keep it in place. So with those connections now made, now we're going to tape them up with some electrical tape and then re-insulate the wire. So with that now done, we're gonna plug our harness back in. Now, in the event they take everything out, the factory sub will still work. All right, so we got it all zip tied there. Let's reassemble our panel. All right, so we got the side all put back together. We put a little hole there so we can run our cable through it. On this side, pop this up as well. And there's a really nice factory ground right here. Now, for those non-B&O, there's your factory radio right there. So if you pop this panel back, pull out the 8mm, pop this panel back, you can get to your factory plugs to do the T-harness, which we can offer on our website. But that makes it nice and easy to tap in the signal because it's also back here for the non-B&O drivers. So we're going to put our ground on that factory ground bolt. Same thing, we put a hole through this cubby for a power wire to run through. And then once our ground is on, we can start reassembling this. We'll run our power wire along the passenger side, all the way front, onto underneath the hood. Okay, so we got our ground on. Good to go. Right, so what you saw us pull off that panel. We just fished it up underneath the B-pillar there. Pop this panel off as well, just tucked it up underneath the carpet. Then we're to this point, and now at this point, we need to go through the firewall. Main grommet here is right on this side. Now it's actually really soft rubber. So what we did here is got our notorious hanger. Now we want to stay totally away from the OEM wiring. We do not want to impact that in any way. Poked our wire through there. It just really soft rubber. Now we got a ton of soap and water on there, so it poked through super easily. That's where it came out. And we fished it up here. Now what we're gonna do is attach our power wire to that side. We'll lube it up with a ton of soap and water, and then we'll pull our power wire through that rubber grommet. Okay, so we got our wire all taped to it. We don't want to hang up at all in there, so we got it nice and smooth. Lots of soap and water. Let's pull it on through. All right, now I actually want to step ahead and pulled out the battery box just so you have an idea of what that grommet looks like. And that's where it came out there. Now we had a little nipple there that we cut off, but that allowed me to now pull our wire through safely through that grommet without impacting the factory wiring whatsoever. So that's on through. Our grommet's all nice and tight against the firewall. There is a grommet down there, but that happens to be a drain for the sunroof. Now you can also tap another hole if you want to do that. We just ran it through the OEM grommet. So that's what that looks like here. All right, so we got our battery all back in here. Battery box, everything like that. We went ahead and ran our fuse and fuse holder just right there. Connected it to the power wire. And then we went right there to the positive post on the battery. Now there's tons of other posts there on this distribution panel, but a lot of them are fused from factory fused. So we went right to the post there. That's just probably the best and safest spot to pull power, but that's totally up to you. So we're done under the hood. We're good to go. Put the negative back on the battery. So at this point in time, we can put just a plastic shroud back on and shut the hood. Okay, so we got all our panels all back together. Good to go. We went ahead and put our base knob here. Kind of cool spot. Nice and empty. Easy to get to, but at the same time, it's hidden in plain sight. Worked out nice. So we got everything all reassembled here, and the nice thing is, everything is totally concealed in this cubby. The nice thing is, it's serviceable if needed. Now we left some length of power and ground as well as wire on the other side, so if you had to pull that out to get to the spare tire, you could. You're not totally trapped in there, so we wanted to ensure that there's plenty of wire there in the event they had an emergency and had to pull the spare out from a flat. So, but that's in there, that's good to go. And at this point in time, we are done with this install. If you have any questions on what we did here, go ahead and post a comment below. And like I said, we can link all our favorite parts for your install in the description of this video. Be sure to hit the like button if you like what you saw, and don't forget to subscribe. We post great content on the channel all the time. We'll see you in the next video.